Welcome to the Indian Gaming Association's The New Normal webcast. My name is Lisa Johnson. I'm the conference manager for the Indian Gaming Trade Show and Convention. I'd like to share a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Everyone is muted by default except for our speakers. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question or chat box and they'll be brought up at the end. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Victor Rocha, conference chairman of the Indian Gaming Association.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome to The New Normal, your go-to source for insightful discussions on the gaming industry and critical issues affecting Native American tribes across the United States. I'm Victor Rocha. My co-host is Jason Giles, Executive Director of the Indian Gaming Association. In today's webinar, we're talking to Steve Ruddick, gambling industry analyst and consultant, and my friend and partner, Gene Johnson, Executive Vice President of Victor Strategies. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome.
Morning.
Good.
Well, afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm in California. I just woke up, so it's morning according to the world where I sit. Listen, I want to talk about basically, like I said, there's a lot of discussion about the effect of online gaming on land-based gaming, and I think there's no better place to look at it than New Jersey. I think New Jersey, we have a really robust marketplace. We have regulators that are supporting the industry. I think a lot of people go there to get their products in first. So, it's a good laboratory for what's happening on the industry. And as online platforms, the smartphones are gaining popularity, the land-based casinos are encountering challenges and opportunities too also. So how significant is the role of internet gambling in the overall growth of New Jersey? And is this trend sustainable? Steve, we'll start with you.
New Jersey online gaming has, to me, it saved the market. They were facing some pretty tough competition from Pennsylvania. A lot of the casinos were underwater when in 2012 when they first started looking at it. They finally got it done in 2013. Online gaming launches, it's got off to a bit of a slow start. There was a lot of payment processing. Geolocation was in its infancy. People weren't really sure how to use it. But over time, it's grown into an absolute juggernaut. And I've argued that if there wasn't online gaming in New Jersey, there'd be maybe 3 or 4 casinos left, as opposed to what we have now. Yeah, we had a lot of closures right after the market opened, but had really nothing to do with online gaming. It had to do with the pre-existing conditions of the market. Still a lot of room for improvement, I think, in the land-based market there, but online gaming has saved many of those casinos and in the process, many of those jobs.
Steve, the other day, as you're talking, I saw that Resorts World sold their online gaming product. Well, what's that about? That has nothing to do with online gaming in New Jersey, or is this other business decisions?
Yeah, it was an interesting sale. Not the biggest acquisition we've seen recently, but it definitely caught some attention. So basically, what they did was they sold 2 online skins, which was
one Native American
Resorts Casino
Mohegan,
and Mohegan
right?
Sun, which is Mohegan. So Mohegan operates Resorts Casino, but that contract expires in December, and they've said they're not going to continue. So it does kind of raise the question of what happens to the Resorts Casino, the land-based casino, after that point. And of course, they also have PokerStars skin. They have DraftKings is under their skin. So that's still under the main land-based brand.
Gene, what's your take on that?
I completely agree with what Steve said about the state of the industry. iGaming's tremendously significant to New Jersey. Right now, year to date through August, the entire industry has produced $4.2 billion in revenue, and 1.9 of that has been iGaming. Slots have only produced 1.4 billion. So this is a huge piece of the industry. And tables are $500 million, sports betting is about $750 million. But increasingly, iGaming is becoming the main revenue producer, and it's growing. It appears to be sustainable because it's growing at 28% year over year.
Well, I think if you take a look at Hard Rock, I think they're probably a good example of what's going on in AC. They seem to be the largest grossing casino on the ground in AC. How's their mobile product doing?
Very well. I do have some charts I can show if that's.
Yeah. I want to see something. Listen,
But-
I just want to go ahead, Jason.
Well, Gene, but just so the folks know, how does iGaming work in New Jersey? It's available to all state residents.
No, it's available to anybody who's within the geofenced borders of the state. You
Okay,
don't have to be a resident. New Jersey is a little unusual because they tethered the licenses to casinos, but they have multiple skins for each casino. So as Steve was saying, Resorts has the RSI, but they also have DraftKings Casino and several other brands are out there with multiple.
do they have any interstate agreements with Delaware or Pennsylvania?
For poker, they do.
For
And
poker,
I'll
they do.
let Steve talk to poker and the current decline.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Steve, right on your right up your alley. He wrote a newsletter.
Poker
today
is
talking
about I think in August it was about 2.5 million of the compared to 195 million for iGaming. It's underperformed expectations.
So it's do you think Resorts World shut off those two titles because they weren't making money, or is it just like to allow someone else? I mean, if you have PokerStars and FanDuel, then obviously the questions are asked. I'm asking, it's totally random because it's just happened, but
I think it's a case of Boyd wanting to gain the capability. Here's a chance for them to get an operator that has a proven ability. They're in multiple states. All of a sudden, this puts Boyd in a position where they have an online interface.
It seems like Boyd has been very aggressive lately too. You see their name. I know in tribal gaming, they've been reaching out to tribes, a couple tribes here in California. So they're really making some moves to prepare for the evolution of gaming. You know what I mean? Land-based online gaming now coming to the New Jersey market. What effects is this having on land-based gaming? Is this it seems like the narrative is starting to happen is that there's a behavior modification. People are starting to say, why go to the casino? Is this something that the casinos should be concerned about, or is online gaming part of their capture strategy?
Yeah, I would say it's both. You need to be concerned about your current strategies that you're employing if the customer behavior is shifting. I think the pandemic changed the way a lot of people interact with the internet. A lot of people that were hesitant about doing things online, whether that's online ordering for a restaurant or whatever it is, suddenly were forced to do it. And they're like, you know what, this isn't so bad. It was like when I remember when I was a kid and cell phones came around, I'm like, I don't want people to know where I am. I don't want to be at the beck and call of everybody. And then once you start using it, you're like, how did I live without this? So I think you start seeing that customers' behaviors are changing, not because people are pushing them in those directions, but because that's what they prefer. And I don't think you can stop that. I think you can try to get in the way of it and slow it down, but eventually those behaviors are going to become the reality. And the casinos that go along with it and prepare for that and say, you know what, we need to shift some of the things we're doing. We don't have to shift everything. To Gene's point about the amount of gaming revenue that's being generated online in New Jersey, that's where people are looking to gamble, but that doesn't mean that they still don't want to go to a casino. That doesn't mean they still don't want the other things that casinos offer or the occasional live casino experience. I watch movies at home, but I also go to the movie theater when I want to see a specific movie at the theater. So there's a place for both. And I think the casinos that get that balance right will come out even better in the long run, as long as they do embrace online in some respect and don't just say, I'm going to outsource this to some other company that's going to just give me a small cut of it. And then eventually the customer behaviors change to the point where that small cut doesn't really amount to much.
Why do you guys think Las Vegas hasn't adopted this then?
Can
Why
I
is
add
it?
to that, though,
Yeah, go
Victor?
ahead. Go ahead, Gene.
I look at it as restoring a missing piece to the gaming industry. And I worked in Atlantic City in the pre-internet days. And I was in charge of the research department. I was research director for one of the Atlantic City casinos. And we did a lot of research and we had a missing demographic. Most of our audience was older,
Good point. Yeah.
retired. They had time and money to spend. The people that we didn't have were the younger people who were still working and had families. And through online, they're now able to participate in that market. So this, all that money that is coming in to the market is being driven primarily by new customers that weren't there before.
You know what, Gene? I remember going to the Atlantic City casinos in the late 80s, and it was like a scene out of the Matrix, except there was like all these old people attached to the slot machines and just acres and acres and acres of just an older demographic. You know what I mean? There was no young people in Atlantic City. It was like a dystopia or something, you know? And you've seen, obviously it's involved. I think, you know, the product in Atlantic City is really nice. Those of us who go and who have been there, we know that it's a nice place. But I think, you know, you touch upon a really important thing, which is the demographics. And that's what the industry has always looked at. If we looked at the last 10 years, you know, and the industry creating millennial zones, millennial zones, boomers, no boomers allowed, or Gen X zones, and you know they'll put computers and hip hop tagging on the wall and say this is for the young kids, and it's just always like tumbleweeds blowing through every time you go through those things. So you know this has been something very effective. But again, my question is, you know, why isn't Las Vegas doing this? You know, why don't you see the casinos in Vegas doing this?
I think they do it in a different way. So to Gene's point, you're missing out on this younger demographic. If you look back at the poker boom, so I started playing poker professionally before in the late 90s. I brought the average age of a table down 30 years. I was in my early 20s, right? I was an outlier. Fast forward 6-7 years, and now I'm an old man. You know, I'm in my late 20s. I'm an old man. So now you see that it's not that there wasn't an appetite for poker among that demographic. They just didn't know about it and they had no way of accessing it. Online poker gave them the ability to say, I'm going to try this thing out. And what happened is you end up getting massive influxes of people into casinos. And what do they find out when they get into the casinos? Hey, there's nightclubs here. Hey, there's all of these other things that are happening here besides the poker table. I think what Las Vegas has done really effectively is not capture the 20-somethings gaming revenue, but capture their disposable income through those nightclubs, through the, you know, the parties, through all of those things. That's how Las Vegas has been approaching it. And it makes sense as a tourist destination that they understand people are coming here to spend money. So they're not looking at like a regional market where you might want to approach that demographic slightly differently. But Las Vegas has fine-tuned how to get young people to spend money in that city.
It helps having desert all the way around it so nobody can go anywhere, you know. And speaking of, it's like being on an island, you know, where in New Jersey, the demographics is still kind of fluctuating, but it isn't Vegas. I mean, Vegas it's the fly-in wonderland in the world. And by the way, you have to admire the way they've evolved, unlike anyone else in the industry. You know what I mean? In adapting to sports and dealing with tribal gaming by being its own identity. In Atlantic City, you kind of have the same thing, except it's commercial gaming. The market is no longer their own. They're not worried about Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun anymore. They're worried about Pennsylvania. And now there's these online gaming, I mean, excuse me, these land-based casinos, especially if, you know, Jay-Z and these guys get a casino down in Times Square, whatever that means. You know, I personally wouldn't go to New York for a casino. I'm sure some of it would be interesting, but I think it'll be interesting. You know, I'm not the greatest soothsayer when it comes to this stuff. Oh, by the way, as a real quick, Jason, I want to give a notice to everyone that I went to a professional football game on Sunday. I watched the Rams beat the 49ers, and I saw the 50-50 raffle, and I had no idea what you were talking about last time, but I seen it was about $250,000 at SoFi Stadium on
SoFi.
Sunday. Yeah, yeah, and
I
the
mean,
Rams won, and it was a good game too, by the way.
did you see how they were they taking cash or card or?
I didn't
Okay.
see that. I didn't see, you know what? I got there late, of course. My kid had a soccer
Right.
game, so I had to take care of that, and then we went there. So I didn't see how it was done, but I did see
Did they
and
pitch it as, was it to save the homeless or, protect the children? I mean,
we
what
don't
was
care
the
about that.
scam?
It's California. We don't care about the homeless. We care about
Oh, okay.
facelifts, and you know what I mean? That's why it was such a bad strategy for FanDuel DraftKings
Yeah.
to talk about the homeless, you know.
I mean, yeah,
Sure.
those, well,
If-
that's a topic for another session, but those 50-50s, I'm getting worried about them because, they're cropping up everywhere in Indian country and, a lot of times under the guise of charitable stuff. But
oh yeah.
Gene, real quick, so what in Jersey specifically? So they've got the population. That's why I asked how it functions. So if you're a tourist passing through New Jersey, you can gamble there. So what are we seeing? I mean, so as Victor said, Jersey's got good set of data now, 10 plus years, even through COVID. I mean, are we starting to see the brick and mortar suffer here from online gaming?
Can I
Ubiquity?
show a chart, Victor?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
share your screen. Yeah.
Do that.
Hide the OnlyFans.
Yes, I'll do that. I don't know if you guys can see this, but
Sure.
this is a chart of New Jersey looking at total iGaming, total land-based, and sports betting. And it shows you a couple things. And the first, I think, really drops out is that land-based isn't declining, it's flat, I would say. So I think iGaming has maybe taken away a little bit of the growth. But if you look at iGaming, it started out in November of 2023, and it's under 50 million until you get the legalization of sports betting in July of 2018. And you'll notice that iGaming really kicks off. There's a symbiosis, an affinity between sports betting and iGaming. People on a sports betting site find that there's also a casino. And you see that iGaming is increasing very steadily. Land-based is steady, and sports betting is probably more volatile. I think they had a bad month in August, but they'll be up again in September.
That definitely shows a trend, doesn't it, Gene? I mean, I'm not, I think we all know. The only thing I don't know more about sports is probably math. Just
But
kidding, by the way.
shows
Just
that-
kidding.
it's
You
land-based
can read
is
the chart.
not going away. That's for sure.
No. Well, Gene, and look at, and in Indian country, there's always this apprehension of online gaming because of the investments into to their property and what it's meant to them and their investments, and more importantly, what it's meant to the government and social services and stuff like that. And that's really what comes from the fear and the apprehensions. When you look at this, if you pull back even further, I think you're going to see online gaming catching up to land-based gaming. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is behavior modification, aren't we?
If the growth trend continues, it's gonna catch land-based.
Yeah, because listen, I watch movies on my computer too, and I will go to a movie theater because of my kid, but it's definitely not what it used to be 20 years ago, And I think that's the issue with that a lot of tribes are having. Are we done, Gene?
I can show a couple others if you have the tolerance.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is market share. And maybe a better way to show it would be this. But if you look at, this is year to date for 2024, the two companies at the top are not casino companies. They're not license holders in New Jersey. They are permit holders, they call them. They're the subsidiary licenses. So FanDuel is number 2, and DraftKings is number 1 casino operator in online gaming in New Jersey. And then the second tier are the casino companies: MGM, Borgata, and BetMGM, Caesars Palace, Hard Rock, Golden Nugget. So it's a picture of perhaps the land-based casino market getting taken for a ride in terms of iGaming, if you want to call it that. Certainly, the leaders in sports betting have been able to leverage that leadership into iGaming as well.
And you know what, Gene, that is the existential threat that a lot of tribes see, which is, and listen, that was the big issue in California. That's what the tribes were going, no, that's not the way it's going to work here. You know, we are going to be, it's going to be land-based. These online guys are not going to get between us and our future, us and our destiny. And that's kind of been what, you know, you see the arguments, they're being obstructionists, they're stopping history, you know, but that's just, it's an existential fight for the tribes, you know. Steve, what do you think of those numbers?
I think it's important to realize that up until sports betting came along, it was the casino brands that were outperforming the online focused brands. So it was resorts, it was Golden Nugget, it was the land-based brands that people trusted that they were using for iCasino. Sports betting came along and acted like an iCasino funnel. Gene's earlier shot shows that perfectly, where, you know, iGaming was growing at a nice steady pace, and then sports betting supercharged that growth. And the supercharge of that growth was sport-specific people coming into the online gaming ecosystem. So it's important when tribes do get involved in this, that there are very specific rules that are laid out. Protecting that brand is super important. That growth would still happen if it was called DraftKings Casino at resorts, right? It doesn't have to be just DraftKings Casino. So I think there's something to look at there when this conversation comes up again in California, is how do we protect our brands? But how do we also leverage the technology that these companies are offering that obviously people enjoy and appeals to people? And it's sports betting did something. So iCasino in every state was tethered to land-based properties. It was your license had to be through that. Sports betting kind of flipped that around a little bit. At first it was, and there were all those market access deals that really no longer even apply because most states allow for online only licenses. And that's where I think you run into a bit of friction between existing gambling and these new online operators, is when there is no tethering to the existing casinos.
But you know, it reminds me of the tribes. You know, the tribes' big issue here is erasure. You know what I mean? If you look in California, and you take my tribe specifically, you know, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars and continues to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on branding in Southern California. And there is no incentive for them to allow FanDuel or DraftKings into the market, especially when you look at numbers like this, and especially when the other tribes start looking at down, you know, Agua, San Manuel, and other tribes that have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, you know. So for them, it's erasure. It's like when they renamed the Mount Denali, Mount McKinley, you know, and so that's kind of how the tribes see it. They see it as a form of erasure, and that's where the caution comes from. And these numbers are not going to make anybody happy in California, you know? But how does this be a positive for tribal gaming, Gene? How is this a positive for tribes?
Well, it's tremendous positive for many reasons. I mean, the factors that are growing or driving the growth of iGaming are that, you know, you can add that new demographic to your casino base. You can also, you know, you offer convenience, you offer immediacy, but you're also expanding your market from a radius around your land-based casino to the limits of the state. And you can leverage your brand to, you know, service patrons anywhere in the state. So you're, as the chart showed before in New Jersey, it may have taken some growth off of land-based, but it's added almost as much revenue, more revenue than all the slots we're producing in New Jersey.
But what good is it if it's all going to FanDuel and DraftKings?
Well, that's the deal. It has to be tied to a casino license. And, you know, that's where you're going to have the most jobs and the most economic impact and I think benefit the greatest number of stakeholders.
So let's take a look at Arkansas and Florida. You know, these are two markets that don't have a FanDuel and DraftKings. You know, how are these guys doing? Steve, you start.
So
Or Jason. We need to review you.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Steve.
Steve.
No.
I would say that Florida is a little too new to
Yeah.
understand where the market is at this point. Arkansas is not performing well. But again, it's not just that they're missing FanDuel and DraftKings. It's that the way the market's structured isn't conducive to, you know, the type of growth you saw when Michigan immediately launches. There's missing elements there. The way that the market is structured to set up where there's specific revenue sharing that has to go to the land-based property keeps what I would say is better products out of the market because they just don't feel that 51% going to the land-based property is a sustainable option for them. I would say that they're probably on sub 40 and they're still gonna complain about that based on their margins. So I think Arkansas is one where the market structure itself is kind of self-limiting, and I would say Florida is just a little too new. I have a feeling that based on Hard Rock's performance in other states, how they're growing, I think that will eventually get up to a typical market capture that you see in other states.
We don't see the actual figures for Florida, but they're evidently huge. I know Oilers and Krejcik listed Hard Rock as probably among the top 5 sports betting companies nationwide. So that tells you a lot. They're also in New Jersey and other states, but Arkansas, you have a limited number of options. Like there are only 3 platforms you can bet on. And the one that's performing best is Bet Saracen, and that's Quapaw tribe, and they are using a Melco platform. So I think the platform has a lot to do with it too. I know the introduction in Arkansas was not really smooth. There were a lot of problems.
Still
with the
not
application.
smooth. Yeah, they still have issues in Arkansas.
But
Jason,
Gene,
what do you
so-
think?
Well, Canute asked a good question on here, you know, so and it's something I'd like to get both your opinions on. You know, New Jersey is a densely populated area. You know, if we're trying to sell this to, you know, even in Oklahoma or Arizona, some of these other places where, you know, tribes are really just outside of the cities. I don't know that we can expect to see the same impact. You know, that's what tribes worry about, is that it's going to drive away their customer base. You know, they're not going to take that 20-30-minute drive to the casino if they can just stay home. You know, whereas New Jersey, you know, that the density around Atlantic City and up and down the East Coast there just gives them a leg up. They've got constant traffic. So I don't know, Gene, what do you think it foretells for
Well-
the future? What Jersey is experiencing?
Jason, I'm gonna disagree with you here. If you've ever
Okay.
been to Atlantic City, there's not a whole lot around it.
No, that's
That's
true.
South Jersey. and all the people-
Swamps, the Meadowlands.
Yeah,
No, Pine
But,
Barrens, excuse me, the Pine Barrens.
That's me on the Pine Barrens.
yeah.
But they're facing an existential crisis should New York get its act together and actually build casinos in the
Good point.
downstate.
Hmm.
Atlantic City is going to be hammered by that. About a third of the market comes from northern New Jersey and New York. So iGaming is pretty much a savior to that industry. And I would argue that the tribal casinos need to look at having an online presence that if you ignore the internet, it's at your own peril.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
I
for
agree.
sure. I don't know how you attract more customers or expand your base unless you get a component like that. What do you think, Steve? I mean, I can tell you though, if we take a place like Oklahoma, it's a lot of commuters. They definitely drive to the casino still a lot. I don't, but go
I
ahead,
think it
Steve.
comes, I think it comes down to the convenience element for a lot of people. I think I've always said there's a certain amount of time I will drive to do something. And even 5 minutes more than that is too much to ask. And I look for the convenient option. So if it's my casino trip is, listen, I'm not driving more than an hour and 15 minutes. If people live an hour and a half, hour 45 outside of that zone, they might start shifting more and more of their play to online. So how do you then entice them to come back to the casino? Whether that's through the reward systems, just basic things you can tie in online. But again, that has to be done through tethering those online options to your land-based property. You can't have just a rogue operator that's just pulling customers away and not offering them any reason to go to the actual casino. And then it comes down to so I'm in Massachusetts, and obviously Foxwoods and Mohegan had the market pretty wrapped up. Twin River all of a sudden came along and started, expanding what was basically a old racetrack, and they've become a very big business in Rhode Island. And it creates a choke point. So those people of convenience that if from where I am, it takes me 35 minutes to get to Twin River and an hour 15 to one of the tribal casinos. If I was a person of convenience, I would stop at Twin River. Now we also have MGM Springfield, we've got Everett, we've got a racetrack in Plainville that's more of a racino. And so there's all these different options. If you live in Northern Mass, there's New Hampshire card rooms. There's all these places you can go to. And I always worry about when these new options come along, it's not so much the people that already visit your casino I would worry about. It's the people that are just outside that you're trying to expand the circle that you get to. And then all of a sudden you've made that a little bit harder for yourself. So when you add a new casino that's on the way to Foxwoods, it gives that person a chance to stop off. That person that was going to go for the weekend, it's a 3.5-hour ride for them. Now you've kind of given them another reason to not visit your casino, whether that's a competing property or whether that's online. There's a certain convenience factor that comes into play. And I would say that it goes back to our original points about the demographics. Yeah, I believe, somebody who's in their 50s and is on a 2-week vacation from work might still make the trip because they're like, this is a trip, this is a getaway. Somebody who's younger, who's willing to drive from LA to Vegas, might not be willing to drive from, northern Oklahoma to the nearest casino.
And
What's interesting is that, entertainment seems to be one of those things that really draws people. You see Vegas is one of the entertainment capital of the world, I would say. But if you look at here in California, the San Manuel tribe, which is 75 miles outside of Los Angeles, that's their big thing. You know, they have like Mariah Carey coming, they have all these big talent. And so you want that type of incentive to get people to get in the car and drive more than 90 minutes, 2 hours, you know, and sitting in traffic. I mean, that's the reality of Southern California. You're going to be sitting in traffic if you're going to go somewhere. So, you know, I think a lot of the tribes and there aren't any real urban casinos in California. So part of the appeal is getting people to get in the car to have the weekend, the hotels, the entertainment, the thing that Vegas did, but a lot more low key in a sense that it's not as over the top, you know. But I think this is the reality that, you know, online gaming and mobile is inevitable. I think because of the consumer habits and the way that, I mean, we live with our phones now, so it's ridiculous to think that, you know, it's not eventually going to come. But I think the tribes are suspicious, you know what I mean, as they should be of anyone saying this is the new trend, because we've seen new trends come and go. I don't know if you guys have read this fabulous article that Jeff Wang wrote yesterday about the death of the gambling expertise, but his I'll send it to you, Jason. It's absolutely brilliant.
No, I read
Talking
it.
about, yeah, talking about, you know, the industry and how the industry's changed, and it's no longer a gambling, you know, it's about taking money from everybody that walks in your door, you know, and the experience has changed, and you know, that's what the industry has become. I think if you look at online, you know, listen, I started gaming Pong, you know what I mean? That's how old I am. Competitive Pong, you probably heard of me before. Um, but you know, now you know, it's such an integral part of young people and stuff and the internet and stuff. And I don't know if my kid will ever want to go inside a casino unless I drag them into them. So, you know, the online gaming does capture that younger demographic that the industry has been trying to get so long. And by the way, that's been FanDuel and DraftKings calling cards since the very beginning, when they were a DFS company that didn't care about sports betting or online gaming. Now they're poker, you know, excuse me, sports betting companies that really care about online gaming now, you know. So it's really this existential threat that a lot of tribes are seeing, and I think it's for good reason, you know. So Jason, what do you think, man? There's a lot here,
Well,
brother.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know that we've well, other than to keep going around. I mean, so we know Arkansas and Florida, they're kind of unique right now. What about Pennsylvania? I mean, is it unrealistic to see, Gene, that you know eventually these high density areas from Maine down to North Carolina, you know, will they all have platforms of online gaming and reduce their you know, land-based casino options, and you've got a whole Eastern Seaboard now that at one point might be interrelated, and you can just go from, you know, it's kind of a, and I should throw on top of that, Gene, you know, today they introduced legislation, the Safe Bet Act, Congressman Tonko in New York, and then Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut has the Senate version. You know, reading through it, boy, they want to put limits on or they want to limits on problem gambling stuff, but also about how big of a bets they can take, and you have to like confirm that the person's able to put that kind of wager in. Restrict use of credit cards. It can't be anything that the commercial guys want. But you
No.
know, no use of AI to collect betting information and then, you know, develop betting patterns. You know, it's not all bad. It's very it's going to be contentious though, because that's going to be that's what could slow down online gaming, Gene, is if you know, you don't take credit cards and you got to verify if someone wants to bet more than $1,000 in 24 hours. I don't even know how you'd begin to. We got to take their tax returns. I don't know what.
A lot of this is being driven by failures in the UK and Europe for
Right.
these gaming companies that really not lived up to their responsibilities.
Mhm.
And we've faced existential threats before. I started out in the Atlantic City industry, and at the time it was a monopoly in the East Coast. Atlantic City and Vegas were the only places you could gamble. And then
There's
Delaware
no way
got-
you could run a casino in Atlantic City and go bankrupt back then, right?
Right.
Only one guy
busted.
figured out how to do that.
Yes, that's right. 3 casinos.
Wow.
Go ahead.
But
Wow.
the evolution of gaming was to expand, geographically, which was in the 90s and the early 2000s. An amazing expansion of land-based gaming. When I started out on a Saturday night, people would dress up in suits to go to the casino. Now you can go to the casino around the corner. Everyone lives, I think 80% of the population lives within an hour of the casino now. And this evolution has led to something of a commoditization of gambling. And that's what Jeff Huang's article was getting at. You have to provide experiences that are going to entice your customers to come. And if you have an internet portal, if you're in iGaming or sports betting, or even a social casino, you have the ability to reach a much wider audience and influence them, give them reasons to come to your property. And that's, after the expansion of gaming in Pennsylvania, Atlantic City really took a hit. And then New York legalized and took another hit. And that's when casinos started to close and they had to reinvent themselves. And this is what is the challenge now for land-based casinos is, how do you leverage that new audience, give them reasons to come and, make that an operational profit machine. You look at what's happened in Vegas over the last 40 years now, I guess, where food and beverage used to be an amenity, less than a third of all the revenue. And if I have my numbers correct, I think last year, the Strip produced $20.5 billion in gaming revenue, but it also produced $15 billion in non-gaming revenue. It's now more than 2/3 of the revenue. Sports betting offers an opportunity to juice your food and beverage. Many properties have seen 15 to 20% increases in their food and beverage when they put in a retail sports book. So along with the challenge is an opportunity.
Gene, you mentioned Europe and the gaming operators there have really screwed the pooch. You know what I mean? You're looking at the regulators. They've been talking about this white paper in Parliament now for a while, and it seems like some of the language out of the safe bet was taken out of the UK. They're talking about, means testing and stuff like that. They've been talking about that in the UK for the longest time. It seems to go away and come back and stuff like that. But if you can't trust them in Europe when they had a second chance of doing it in the United States, how can we trust them? I think that's why you're seeing this response from Blumenthal and Tonka, because an industry in their exuberance to get market share, they've just plastered the airways with advertising, and online gaming is gambling addiction is coming up. You're dealing with now, like, it's always been an issue with land-based gaming. But again, with mobile, there's a mindset that says this makes it easier to be addicted. There's another mindset that says it's easier to control because you can see spending, you can see trends and velocity and stuff like that. But then it's up to the industry to judge this, and they've shown just to be terrible stewards of protecting the industry and the customer. So I don't think the safe bet's going to go anywhere. I thought Titus's article the other day about it not going anywhere, I thought the reasons were very valid, election year and stuff like that, but I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's a matter of time. I think people like Blumenthal have been really vocal about the industry, and he's used his role as a senator. And by the way, he wasn't great for the tribes when he was attorney general in Connecticut, by the way. So this guy's been very consistent all the way through against the gambling and to the gaming industry and stuff like that. So is it a matter of time before we get restrictive regulation like this for the industry, Steve?
Yeah, that's been since 2018 has been, it's inevitable. And I always caveat it with inevitable doesn't mean immediate. It means 1 year, 5 years, 20 years. Eventually, this is going to come back. I think what you're seeing with better is the first, like, here's the things we're concerned about. Now you come back and tell us why we shouldn't be concerned about it or what you're doing about it. But if your argument is none of that is true, there's no harm, we have it all under control, that's when you get that type of government overreach that nobody wants. And this, as much as I don't expect anything to happen this year, no one expected UIGEA to get jammed into the Safe Port Act in 2006 on the last day of Congress. Nobody expected the DOJ to flop on the Wire Act over time. There's all these different things that could happen with the Safe Bet Act. And to your point, I think what the industry has failed to do is just be transparent about what's going on. They're not saying, like, they don't say, yes, we're posting a lot of advertisements now because we're trying to bring people from the black market. They're saying, no, look, actually advertising's going down. Everybody just starts showing up with their own ideas and their own facts, and look at this data point here from this chart, and it just turns into he said, she said, nothing gets accomplished, and then whoever pretty much has the most political clout is gonna win the argument over. So I think the Safe Bet Act is something the industry should take very seriously. I think it's something they should be very concerned about, and it's something that eventually, in some way, shape, or form, is going to come to pass. And do you want to have a seat at the table while that's being planned, or do you just want to see what the eventual outcome is and cross your fingers?
Well, I know, and I feel that this will be a big issue in California eventually. I think, when you get to the voters in California, they're going to want to know that there are going to be these type of restrictions in place. I don't think California is going to be as laissez-faire as everybody wants. I think to pass it in the market, especially a market, it's fascinating to watch it across the industry. It's been fascinating to watch the growth of it. And you see a big part of this discussion is taking the players away from the black market and bringing them in. That's what New Jersey's big stand is. And by the way, and it's phenomenal. But I think if you're not dealing with the addiction issues, I think you're going to see what's happening in the UK, which has just swung all the way back to pendulum. That you're going to see that in the United States, and I think there's a lot of people that are willing to go that far and restricting gaming and making it ponderous. And I always talk about the time I was in London. Reebok was there too, by the way, and they're telling us about how they gamble and in the UK. And if you're sitting here, but they were like going, listen, if you're sitting here for 15 minutes and you don't look up, someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say how you're doing. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour, something like that. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but what they didn't talk about was the customer experience. And kind of that's at the root of this, is that's kind of what we're talking about. Online gaming needs to have a better customer experience. It's got to be more than gambling. If you go to my casino, it's hotels, it's golf courses, it's dining, it's entertainment, and it's also a 2-hour drive on the freeway, if you're lucky.
It's also land-based casinos they realize that they're in a sin industry, if you want to call it that. And the granting of licenses to land-based casinos in the US has always come with that condition that if you screw up, your license can be revoked, that you have a responsibility to your customers and to the state that you're operating in to operate in a responsible manner. And many of the companies that have come from Europe and the startups in the US have not had that experience. And that is what is, I think, fueling some of these federal attempts to control the industry.
So you're blaming Greenblatt from BetMGM is what you're saying, right? Is that what you're saying?
I blame Jason.
But Steve, I mean, as you look across the country, I mean, I just don't, if this is going to be a state by state proposition, and part of the Safe Bet Act, it's an opt-in. So they're giving the state attorney generals a decision of whether they want to opt in to a federal regulatory database, which comes with all these additional restrictions once you opt in. But what do you think, Steve? I mean, why wouldn't it, why can't a state, I guess, you know, we look at Mississippi and the way they treat welfare payments, but a state should want to get a hold of this, and they don't need a gambling scandal in their backyard. But maybe it's easier to lay it off on the feds. I'm not sure. So how do you see it, Steve?
It's a strangely structured bill. So I think what it
Mhm.
does is it calls on, so if a state wants to legalize, they have to take their proposal to the attorney general, and the attorney general has to say, yes, this fits in with the federal law that we have passed. Most of the stuff is pretty boilerplate and states already do it. There are a few parts of it that, the industry sees as a little problematic. But
Mhm.
as far as how do you deal with online? And I think that this point has been brought up by everybody. It's a very transactional, the online gaming experience, whereas the land-based experience was always built on it's the experience. You just happen to be gambling. When you're gambling online, you're gambling, and that is the experience you're having. And it's it's been it's been difficult for online to figure out how to be less transactional with how they do it. And maybe the eventual idea of that is that it has to be tied into land-based gaming. I have to appeal to Victor's son in some way to make him want to go to a land-based casino. And whether that's like, hey, he really likes this online game that he plays for pennies, but what he's going going to a show, and we know what he plays, this whatever musician slot machine, and that's playing at this casino, and here's my opportunity to bring him through the casino doors, much like poker players were in the early 2000s. How do I get them in there, and then how do I prove to them that this is a good place to be, that you don't have to gamble at the casino. I go to casinos all the time and rarely gamble. I go for the show. The old version of casinos was you go to gamble and hopefully you stay for a show. Now it's you go for a show and hopefully you stay to gamble. And I think that's how the online gambling apps and have to tie into the land-based properties is you got to give them a reason to go there and a reason to use all of these other non-gaming entities. And if you just so happen to want to have that live gambling experience, well, the way I've been explaining it to people is, why doesn't the app have a find your game app on it? Oh, you like blackjack? Here's a Google Maps walking you to the blackjack pit. You like buffalo slot? Here's the app walking you right to where the buffalo slot. What denomination do you want to be? Oh, you like nickel slots. Okay, we're going to get you over there through the online gaming app.
Yeah, I think the technology that it brings, I think, land-based casino has always talked about how technological they are, but you really, if you walk on the casino, I mean, you're lost. You can barely find food half the time. You know what I mean? And listen, the promise of technology for gaming was, I remember 10 years ago, you're going to walk into a casino wearing RFID and all the lights would change. It'd be like walking in Cosmopolitan and all the slot machines turn into, Dragon Link or Wheel of Fortune and stuff like that. And yet it's still been a real slog to bring the technology. We're going to be wrapping up real soon. And first of all, guys, this has been a fascinating conversation, and a conversation that, although we drove it into the ground, I think it's one that it still has
Right.
wings that we can talk about. Randy Carnett says, please describe online product offerings besides sports books that may hold appeal to a new player demographic. Randy, I think, that's very obvious, which is the online casino, the same attractions that the casinos have are available, the thrill of gambling and, a casino in your pocket, right, Steve?
Yeah, the beauty of the online casinos, you don't have to worry about time on machine. So you can offer those more skill-based type of games that people are gonna, play $5 and the game lasts 3 minutes. Like it's not something you have to worry about because it's not physical space. So I think any interesting offerings would be in that regard, where it's more gamified than what you see in casinos, where they have to worry about time on machine.
Gene?
Well, there are all sorts of online products that do not require, a bill in the legislature to play. And tribes can right now get involved in social casino, where they can put their games in a play for free environment and get their brand out there and start to train up their staffing and their marketing and their operations to deal with online. There are other premium products. We have Class 2 online coming out now, and there are all sorts of new products being developed. Last year I saw a Class 2 roulette game, which I've never seen before. There are all sorts of ways to do that, but there's also the fact that with the commoditization of gambling in the land-based casino world, there is a huge opportunity for service. You were talking about walking around the casino floor. You probably didn't see a whole lot of people, and that wouldn't have been the
It's not
case.
like it used to be, man. You used to have those touch points, where welcome to, the
And
casino
if you
and
go to a
stuff
place
like
like
that.
Verona, they actually have embraced that philosophy of trying to do more personal touch. So there are lots of ways that you can look to increase the appeal of your casino.
Well, you know what? Have any of you guys seen the lottery ticket product now? Have you guys stood in front of a lottery machine and looked at the kind of product they offer now? Like 20, 30, $50 tickets that they're offering. It's just incredible. So gambling is everywhere. If it's not gambling at a casino, you walk to your local liquor store or Target or something and pick up one of those $50 tickets. And I watch people sitting there buying their scratch offs and stuff like that. So you know what, the new Victorian attitude towards gambling just doesn't really hold under close observation, because gambling is everywhere, man. So listen, guys, I want to thank you both very much for coming. I thought this was a fascinating conversation. Jason, would you like to wrap this up, my friend?
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. We'll keep monitoring this. With the legislation out there now, it's gonna weigh more and more on expansion of online gambling. So we'd love to have you guys again. And this is a great discussion. It's don't know that we really solved anything. I don't know that any of this is going to make the California tribes feel safer.
Oh no, we scared the crap out of them.
We'll keep monitoring it, and I hope to see you guys at G2E in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys, I think we'll be here we'll be in G2E next week. So we'll see you guys in Vegas, and then we'll be back after that talking about sweepstakes and some of the other things that are just phenomenal to talk about. So Thanks, guys, so much. I really appreciate your brilliance. And Jason,
Excellent.
Thank you too. Bye, everyone. See you guys in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.